think someone is living inside my hotel room walls. That sound wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the architecture itself. Phoenix, Arizona, 2022. A woman named Emily Carter reported a case that defied standard logic. She wasn't reporting a break-in. She was reporting a man who had already integrated himself into the room before she arrived. Checking into a motel relies on a specific type of trust. We believe that by locking the deadbolt, we are successfully isolating ourselves. We assume the four walls of the room are solid barriers that exist only to protect our privacy. Emily's case suggests that the most dangerous moment isn't when someone tries to force their way in. The real danger is the realization that the space you've just locked yourself into was never actually empty. Room 214 at the Sunset Lodge was the definition of mundane. It was cheap, isolated, and appeared completely vacant.
For Emily, it was just a place to sleep, a quiet box where she could finally be alone. The first sign of trouble was a faint scratching sound behind the drywall. Like most people, Emily looked for a boring explanation. She told herself it was old pipes, or perhaps a rodent moving through the ceiling. This is the result of normalcy bias. When we encounter something threatening, our brains instinctively filter the evidence through a lens of safety. We choose to believe in plumbing issues because the alternative, a human presence in the walls, is too disruptive to our sense of reality. Because the motel was so run down, the environment provided a perfect cover. The early warning signs of an intruder were indistinguishable from the sounds of a decaying building, rendering Emily's intuition useless. The evidence soon became impossible to ignore. Emily noticed the bathroom mirror had shifted several inches on its track, revealing a dark, narrow gap between the glass and the wall. Later, after smoothing out the bedspread and leaving the room for a moment, she returned to find the sheets deeply wrinkled, as if someone had just been sitting on the edge of the mattress. At 3:07 a.m., the television snapped on to a screen of pure static. Underneath the white noise, Emily heard the sound of faint, rhythmic human breathing coming through the speakers. This cumulative weight of anomalies finally broke her normalcy bias. The technical glitches and physical shifts were too consistent to be accidental. Emily was forced to accept that a second presence was occupying the room. These disturbances suggest the intruder wasn't prioritizing total concealment. By subtly altering the room, he ensured Emily would spend her night questioning her own senses and sanity, rather than looking for an exit. The scratching sound soon evolved into something much heavier, the rhythmic, dragging sound of a human body crawling through the drywall. Older motels often include hollow void spaces. Builders left large gaps between the drywall and the structural supports. The ventilation system connects these voids, acting as a hidden transit network, allowing someone to move through the entire structure unseen. When Emily finally removed the vent cover in her room, she found proof of this parallel world. A small nest of food wrappers and half-empty water bottles tucked into the shadows of the ductwork. The motel's design created a functional, hidden habitat. The very walls meant to provide Emily with privacy actually served as a protected corridor for a predator to live and move inches away from her. The confrontation happened in an instant. As Emily leaned toward the open vent, she heard a sharp, sudden inhale, not her own, coming from the darkness inside. A soft male voice whispered from the shadows, "You weren't supposed to find me." Emily spun around, but the room was empty. The voice had come from directly behind the wall she was leaning against. Emily scrambled for her phone to call 911. As she described the intruder, the physical barrier failed. The metal vent cover was kicked outward, clattering onto the floor, leaving the wall wide open. In the beam of her flashlight, a face appeared in the dark square of the vent. He was wide-eyed, smiling, and looking directly at her. Seeing his face confirmed the most invasive reality of the night. While Emily had been trying to ignore the scratching and the static, he had been positioned perfectly behind the grates, watching every move she made from the moment she walked through the door.
When police arrived, they began a systematic search of the motel's internal voids. They tore into crawl spaces and checked every length of the ventilation system Emily had pointed out. They found the vents and walls entirely empty. Despite the physical evidence Emily had discovered, the intruder had successfully retreated back into the building's architecture and vanished.
Inside the shaft of the vent, investigators documented one final detail. Scratched into the metal of the duct were 4 words: 2114 is not empty. The room was eventually cleaned and put back on the market. From a hidden perspective behind the wall, we see the cycle begin again as a new guest checks in, completely unaware they are being watched. In these transient spaces, we think the door is the only way in, but locking it doesn't actually keep the world out. It only traps you inside with whatever was already waiting in the dark.